Today we're working on a pie crust. So to make pie crust, I use my grandma's recipe. I've tried many different recipes that are out there that I found online, and I keep going back to grandma's. It's very simple. She grew up in the 20s, and so it's just really easy, and it always tastes the best out of the ones I've tried. So ingredient wise, you need flour, all purpose. You need vegetable shortening, salt, and ice water. Equipment wise, measuring cups, flour sifter, a dough blender, and just some various measuring cups. Now I already laid out all the ingredients to kind of make things easier. And so to start out, we're going to sift our flour. So take your flour sifter. It's 3 cups of flour. You pour all that in. And then you mix in 1 teaspoon of salt. So you just pour it right on top. This flour sifter here, they make different kinds. This one has a little crank wheel that you just start mixing it. The salt gets mixed in as it goes through, and it just makes the flour a little fluffier and easier to work with. Give it a little tap to get the flour there on the bottom. And after you get all your flour, we'll put the sifter aside and we will add our shortening. So this is 1 cup of shortening. So I'm just going to plop this whole thing in here. Make sure you get it all. That to the side, and we'll start blending. So with the Crisco and using this dough blender, if you just push right into that Crisco, it's just going to get all up in there in a mess. So what I generally do is start putting some flour on top and just kind of start tapping it a little bit. And all that really does is start mixing the shortening and the flour together, and it doesn't get as sticky. It'll start crumbling. So you just kind of keep working it. Sometimes I'll give it a little twist here. Just keep covering it up and get it mixed in there. Every once in a while, take a look at your thing, see if you need to knock any in there. Got a little bit. But you just keep mixing it, and after you get it mostly blended or mostly broken up, you just kind of start going a little more. And what you're looking for is kind of a cornmeal type texture. You don't want to over mix it because you don't want it to become like a dough. You want to keep it somewhat loose. We don't have the water in there yet. But the biggest error you will get is over blending and over mixing, especially with the water. That takes a little bit of finesse, and it takes a couple tries to get that right. So you just kind of keep going till you get a little bit of a cornmeal. There's still a little much on here. So I'm gonna blend this for a couple more minutes, and then we will go to the next step. All right, so I took an extra minute or two and went through and just kind of kept blending, and you can tell it's getting good because it's not powdery anymore. It's a little bit thicker. It doesn't have big chunks of the shortening in there anymore. It's just got a little guy, and it's not, you know, when you get the flour, it's real powdery. Well, this isn't real powdery anymore. So I just kind of reaching around here, no big chunks or anything. So this is good. We're ready to start adding the water. So to add the water, you want to do a little bit at a time. It'll take between 5 to 8 tablespoons of water. I usually start with just making a pocket down there on the bottom. This water, it's cold water. I put ice in it as well, and it's been sitting out for a little bit to get it as cold as possible. Sometimes I'll even put the glass in the freezer for a bit. So this is a 2 tablespoon. So there's 2. And there's 4, and I'm gonna put 6 in here. So with the 6, so 6 tablespoons of water, and then you start kind of mixing it. Now at this point, I usually just use my hands. You know, obviously wash your hands and everything beforehand, and that'll start soaking in there. You just kind of start mixing it up by hand. It's kind of give it squeezes so it all starts mixing together. Keep turning it, keep moving it. You want to get all that dry stuff. You can see like it's starting to clump together a little bit. Now you can always add more water. You cannot take water out. So I would much rather have a dry mixture and look at it and go, okay, you know, this isn't quite where I want it. So I'm gonna add a little bit more. At this point I do 1 tablespoon at a time. So on my 2 tablespoon thing, there is a line here. So this is 1 tablespoon of cold water. And then you just give it a mix. Go slow because you do not want to put too much water in, because you can add more flour, but it's just not going to quite work out how you want it to. So you can see I'm starting to get a ball forming here. So I can get to that bottom. Grab the stuff on the bottom because sometimes the water will stick to the bottom, you know, with the dough, and you can't do much, you know, and then you get overwatered because you're mixing it. So when you think you have enough, and I don't think I have enough yet, but just like a little test, if you make a ball and you go to pull it apart, see how well it does. If it just breaks apart, that's not ready yet. If it goes and it pulls, it's actually pretty good. But I am going to add a little bit more water in, and I am going to do about 1/4 tablespoon. Like I said, you just add a little bit at a time because you do not want to put too much in. I'll start mixing it. All right, I'm going to break it into another ball here, kind of push it together. See, when I pull it, it's sticking. It's a little bit harder to pull apart now. So I think I'm actually looking pretty good. I'd much rather it dry. And I know I keep saying that, but it's the one thing that you gotta pay attention to, because if you do not and put way too much water in it, your pie crust is done. You gotta start over. So it was kind of hard to pull apart. This one is good to go. So I have my ball, put it on the thing. This recipe makes 2 pie crusts, or 1 top and 1 bottom. I usually do Dutch apple or pumpkin, which doesn't have the tops, and so I make 2 pie crusts at a time. So to roll out the dough, first sprinkle flour on your cutting board so that you'll keep the dough from sticking. And I usually put kind of a pile over here because throughout rolling we'll be adding more. So take your dough ball, your crust, and kind of mash it down by hand first. So as you flatten it by hand, I'm going to start using the roller. So same thing, put some flour on your roller, keep the dough from sticking. If you don't put flour on there, it'll roll up on your roller and it'll be kind of a mess. So you just kind of keep working it in every angle in a circle. Try to keep it as even as possible. If you see yourself separating like that, try to start pushing it that way to blend that dough together. Just keep going around. Add more flour as needed on your roller, because the last thing you want to do is have it roll up on you. Try to go from center out. Keep growing it. Try to stay even. Take a look at it. If you think you're getting high on one side, start rolling it in that direction. You know, ultimately you're wanting a circle. Just keep pushing it. So you just saw, I don't know if you saw that or not, but it rolled up on me over here. That's where, oh, I need some more flour on there to keep it from doing that. And then we're just gonna kind of press it on this side, which will push, you see that line kind of disappeared because we mashed it back together. So I'm gonna kind of go this way with it. And if you think you're close to where you want it, you take your pie pan, turn it upside down on there, and you can kind of see. So, you know, I'm good on some of the sides, but I need a little more on too. So, put that off to the side, and we will roll in those directions to spread it out that way. So we're pretty close. I'm going to go just a little more out this way. Put some flour on. And just going to kind of push it. All right, so if you think you're there, which I think we are, I'm just going to go a little more on this side. So what I usually do is take a spatula then, and kind of go around it just to make sure that it's not sticking. Because if it rips, and it will at times, that will get upsetting. Because then depending on the type of pie you're making, the liquid gets in there, makes it soggy, and it just kind of ruins your pie. So with that, I'll lift up one side, kind of put the pan under there, which will allow me to put my hands under here, and then I can pick it up and place it over top the pie pan. And then kind of lift it up and push it into the sides, go around, and once it's all pushed in the sides there, these draped over parts, I usually just kind of go around with my finger and tear it even with the edge of the pie pan. So, you know, if you go slow, you don't want to rip it. If you go too fast, it can rip. Now, I've seen people take like a fork and go around and press all around the edge to make a nice design on there. Generally, I do like Dutch apple pies that have a crumbled top on it, and so you can't really tell. But I don't really like these rough edges the way they are, so I do go around with two fingers and I just kind of press it, just smoothing out the edges, just to make it just a little bit nicer. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not a pie artist. I'm not a master chef. I'm not looking for anything perfect. Mainly, I want it to taste good and not look like, you know, terrible. So with that, there's our pie crust. Now I'm gonna make the apple pie tomorrow, so I'm gonna stick these in the fridge just to keep them from drying out and getting bad. If you're gonna not use it for a while, you can put it in the freezer. You know, cover it with some freezer paper, and you'll be good to go. Whenever you need, just take it out, fill it with whatever pie filling you're making, and you can bake it. You don't have to thaw them or anything because they're not that thick. So if you have any questions on that, or any comments on you know, how we can make it better, or tips for other people, please feel free to leave those in the comments and hit subscribe, and we'll make more videos like this.